You're listening to a Galactic Network podcast. For more, go to gncast.com.
We're the ElseNerds.
Hello and welcome to ElseNerds, a production of Galactic Network. I'm Gregor Sprague, and joining me is Corey Scott. And before we get started, just so you know, for all info on this show, including show notes and subscription links, you can go to ElseNerds.com. And for other Galactic Network programs, you can go to gncast.com. And as a warning, on ElseNerds, we tend to shoot our mouths off without thinking, so we will both spoil things and swear liberally. You have been warned. Corey, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. It's nice to be back. I had been at the show for, what, we've been doing this 5 years? I don't know, at least 4 years. And suddenly I got fired for creative differences, and I had to bullshit my way back on the show. You basically thought I was Sean Burns. I see how it is.
we tried replacing it with a newer, younger model.
I like how you kept saying that I was on assignment, and I'm like, well, that's why it's taking forever. I fucking hate homework.
I kept doing that because it was like it's one of the things I loved doing or hearing on like Nerdist News and Attack of the Show. Whenever they would say like, "Oh, Kevin Pereira is out," they'd be like, "Oh, Kevin Pereira is out fighting the Gila monster," or something like that. So it's like, but I couldn't come up with something that clever. So I'm like, "And Kevin's out, and Corey's off on assignment today. What that assignment is, we don't know."
Nobody should.
Yeah. But no, yeah, glad
let
you're
me
back.
just say, let me just make it clear, Rodman ain't the only one who went to North Korea recently. So yeah.
I had a bad follow-up joke for that, but I'm not going to make it. I am not going to make it. So, avoiding that topic real easy. And hey, Growly Bear. Growly Bear is joining us in our chat live. But no, so let's get into some of the news here. The news this week, we have the Star Wars spinoff, Han Solo spinoff. Lord and Miller were fired from the directing duties, and so yeah, this honestly sounded like a clusterfuck from the beginning.
Yeah, so Phil Lord and Chris Miller have done quite a few movies. They've been sort of Hollywood darlings, it seems like, for a little while. They get brought up in a lot of new projects. They did the Lego movie. They did, I don't know if they remember if they did the first Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or the second one, or they did both, but certainly they've done animated stuff. They were originally supposed to be doing the Flash movie, and then I guess they left that in turn to do this, to do the Star Wars prequel of Han Solo's whatever this turns out to be, his movie. And now they've been seemingly, from what reports say, is that they were let go from the project because of creative differences, which is not a bad thing. It's not like creative differences, oh, they were assholes, so we couldn't work with them, or creative differences of like, we just couldn't get them to do things our way. But certainly we had a vision, we being Disney, being whoever's in charge of handling the stuff for Lucasfilm's properties at Disney. We had a vision of it being this certain thing. And when we started, we both were on the same page. And as it went along, they wanted to do things differently. And we didn't feel that worked for us. And we couldn't come to an agreement. And that happens a lot. But it doesn't usually happen when so much of the filming is already done. It's strange. And recently we had, not super recent, but not too long ago, we had the Josh Trank thing where he left Fantastic Four in the midst of it and said that all the stuff that he had done, they just screwed over and they made it into a completely different film, which is different than what happened to Suicide Squad, whereas the same director was on Suicide Squad the whole time, but in the end, they re-edited it and didn't tell him. This is just strange to leave in the middle of the project.
Yeah, it sounds weird. It sounds different, like a little bit like a clusterfuck, because from how the article is sounding, it does sound like the creators of Clone High. I'm gonna try to work in their directing plugs, like things into the chat.
Clone High is a great show.
Yes.
It's one of those totally underrated animated series that left on a cliffhanger, and people have continuously said, like, why can't we bring Clone High back? It was so good.
Yeah. But the creators of Clone High, it seems like they brought them in because they liked their style. The Kathleen Kennedy and the other executives at Lucasfilm liked their style of filmmaking, and liked what they had seen with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and 21 Jump Street and the Lego Movie, and then 22 Jump Street, and even the couple of episodes like the pilot for Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Last Man on Earth. I've now named all their directing credits.
Wow, those are all really solid though. Like I haven't kept up with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but anytime I catch it, it's still a good show. Last Man on Earth, the only episode that I really liked was the first episode. So yeah, but that's all solid stuff.
And I mean, even with this, like, I mean, even the stuff that they've produced, I mean, everything that they produce, it sort of does have this similar style. Like, they didn't direct, or I don't even think even wrote, but they produced the Lego Batman movie. So there was something that brought them to that when they brought up with Kathleen Kennedy and the other executives at here, they're like, okay, yeah, let's do this. It sounds like one of the people there said that they were getting away from, and this is something we talk about a lot too, they were getting away from the core of the character, with Han Solo.
Right.
And so that's sort of where I think Kathleen Kennedy or whoever stepped in and was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's take a break here. Let's actually make sure that we're getting this character right. And stuff like that. And I applaud them for that, because what's one of the things that I'm trying to tread around not causing this rant, because we are way too early in the show to have a rant by Corey.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never ranted in my life.
The like we talk about this with the DC, and we'll probably talk about this later on in the ElseNerds. Also, why I'm dodging this, but about how DC for Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, they missed the core of some of the characters in there, and so it's like, okay, let's not have, if we can catch this early. And it sounds like they caught it a little late, since there's a lot of the stuff has already been directed. And what does this, because the other thing that this brings up is, what does this do for the timetable, because this is supposed to come out next year.
Yeah, but and it's always amazing to me, because there are other movies that are on the dock, things like The Flash, for instance, which has got a premiere date that's been listed for quite some time and keeps going through directors, like I go through Bags of Oreos, except Bags of Oreos don't get fired, they just don't exist anymore because you tasty Oreos.
Like 5 different directors in a day.
It feels, oh man, that is such a good day. That is a Saturday when it's just fans on me and Oreo crumbs just blowing everywhere and full frontal nudity. It's a good time. But
we like to call that No Pants Saturday.
So I've made no secret of when we talked about this movie coming before, which was, I'm not excited to see a young Han Solo movie, in the sense that, to me, Han Solo is Harrison Ford. And as great as this actor, I'm sure, is, he's not going to be Harrison Ford playing that part. So, and Donald Glover is playing the Billy D part, which is awesome in every sense, except for the fact that it should really just be Billy D who plays Lando. I get that is a perfect casting choice if you have to make that choice, but why are you choosing to make that? But maybe what they did is they came in and said, there's no way to save the fact that you're not Harrison Ford, so we have to just kind of give you your own version of Han Solo to play. We kind of have to let you break out of what he is to make Han Solo your own character. Otherwise, it's going to be unacceptable to watch. There's a suspension of disbelief, and I'm not even sure if that's really the term that I'm looking for in this, but there is a point of like, I'm watching this and I know I'm supposed to be seeing Han Solo on the screen, but I don't. I see someone else entirely. So either take me further away from it so I just get to enjoy it for what it is, or I watch someone perform a caricature of Harrison Ford as Han Solo on the screen and feel constantly taken out of it, which is still probably a better choice than doing a robo form of someone just like plastering young Harrison's face on an actor and having him wander around and then trying to de-age him in the sound room and making Robo Han. I don't know. It's a hard. It already to me had challenges in place, and what other challenges they had to meet. Plus the fact that it's Star Wars at a time when Star Wars is hugely popular again and is going through its third trimester essentially of being popular, because the original Star Wars was huge. And then there was the prequels, which were huge, even if being disappointing. They were huge for a whole new generation, and it brought Star Wars back to the forefront of the zeitgeist of fandom again. And then while Star Wars didn't necessarily die out after either of those times, it certainly hit its lull. But now Star Wars is back in a big way after Episode 9 and after Rogue One. And so they want to keep that momentum going as they're building this to be a giant experience that's going to happen, a movie every year. I can see that there's so many challenges in trying to do this that maybe the same thing like trying to work in the DC or Marvel universe is that you get to a certain point, you realize, wow, this is way less fun to work on this movie than I thought it would be, because the expectations are so above and beyond, and I can't just kind of like make a cool movie, which is what I'm about as a director. You know, and it's
Yeah.
I feel like that with comic books too, is when you hire a writer and an artist on a comic, it's one thing if you're doing, you know, a little side book. If you're doing something that's creator owned, great, it's all yours. If you're doing something that's licensed but at a smaller company, which we'll talk about next week, but with like Boom or with Dark Horse or something, then you've got maybe a little bit more freedom, maybe not. But when you're working on a Marvel iconic character like Spider-Man or Captain America, or you're working on an iconic character like Wonder Woman or Superman, you have such a different level of expectations from both the history, from the fans, from your editors, you know, from the licensing department. Like, you can't put Spider-Man in pink Speedos. That's just not going to work. We've got to put this stuff on T-shirts for people to wear. We have an expectation of what this guy's supposed to look like. Saying nothing of the Scarlet Spider or Iron Spider outfits that they had for periods of time. I get that it's too much at some points where, yes, you get the giant paycheck and the recognition because you made this huge blockbuster hit. But it's a lot of work to go through for something that you maybe don't feel 100% invested in by the end of it.
And here's the other big thing I think that really sort of affects the style. And again, I'm going back to the beginning of filming. Look at these styles of acting or of directing that Lord and Miller do. It's very improv heavy. It's very get the heart of the scene and then, you know, expand upon it that way. That's how a lot of the humor works that they have and stuff like that. You look at the writers of Lawrence and John Kasdan, who wrote, you know, Lawrence Kasdan wrote, or, you know, was part of the screenwriting group behind Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
he's a classic Star Wars guy.
Yeah, he's classic Star Wars. And they write with the style, they favor a strict adherence to the written word. What is on the page is what must be shot type of person. You know, so there right there is a creative clash. And it's also someone, you know, who wrote Han Solo and, you know, and Harrison Ford's other character, you know, big name character here. you'd think, okay, yeah, he would understand who this is, and probably saw with a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the dailies and stuff like that, that they're not really getting what they're sort of missing the point or something.
They're not beholden to the history of Star Wars as much as what it sounds like the writers of the script are, because they were the history of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. And that's why I could see getting a team like Lord and Miller to work in the Star Wars universe, but to do something closer to Lord
Han Solo, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more like Rogue One. Is you give them a situation where they can create new characters and a new side story and get more creative control over the stuff that they're doing, the story they want to tell, as opposed to being beholden to, the prime rock of the Trinity of Star Wars, which is Luke, Leia, and Han. I completely agree with you. I think that you're right, is that it sounds like it's not that any of them were wrong, and we would have no way of ever knowing, since we won't see it finished by this whole creative team together. But you can see why they might have been right about different things that just don't meet in a middle that works for everybody. Yeah. It doesn't sound like anybody's being jerkish about it, though. It's saying creative differences. You think but realistically, it sounds like they're just saying, look, we couldn't find something that worked for all of us, and frankly, Kathleen Kennedy, I'm in charge of Lucasfilm. It has to work for me, because I'm the one in charge of the creative vision here.
I look at this part here, and then I want to get to the other part with this. I look at this with both sides have taken this very, like you have, like you mentioned, the Josh Trank way of, this isn't my shit, this is not my fucking shit, raging, to where it's like, so is that how you feel? Well, guess what? You're never working for us again, motherfucker. Sort of deal.
Didn't he get taken off of his Star Wars movie that he was supposed to do after that?
Yeah. I don't think Josh Trank has done anything really since then. Lord and Miller, because they realize, because they're not to bash Josh Trank, but they did this very professionally. Even though if you realize here, they moved their family for pre-production to London to do this,
Yeah.
So that part sucks. If anyone were to be butthurt and want to whine and complain, I would give it to them, because
I mean, on the other hand, it's like, hey, we kind of got a trip to London out of it,
Yeah. But we're talking, passports and all that stuff. It's not like, oh well, let's just go, hop in the car and we'll drive over here. It's it is a bit of work, but even then, it's one of those, like, they're being very professional as to not burn that bridge,
which is good. Young directors, young creators working in the industry know that there's a lot of people in the industry that they will have to continue to work with, and why would you want to do that? I get, I'm a hothead sometimes. Yeah. We've seen evidence here. I get that sometimes you just want to say, fuck you guys and stuff, but realistically, that's not a good way to continue your career, especially with a company as big and doing so much stuff like Disney is. Disney's ruling everything right now when it comes to the box office. They're just destroying, if it's Marvel, if it's Disney proper, if it's Star Wars. That's a bridge you don't burn, because suddenly you got nothing but fucking moat around Fox, you with dragons and shit, and you're just hoping.
Basically it's like, hey Fox, oh sorry, but you pissed off the Disney company. No, we ain't touching you. Miramax, no. I MGM, no.
Fox might take him just because Fox needs to figure out what the fuck they're doing with Fantastic Four. What do you think about the rumor that Lord Miller might be coming back to DC to do The Flash that they initially left, because that's now they're open?
Yeah, I like this. In all honesty, I look at this as, you look at their style, you look at who they have playing the Flash with, Ezra Miller.
And wasn't Ezra Miller signed on when they were still attached to it?
Yes, yeah. Ezra Miller. God, if you have not seen Perks of Being a Wallflower,
Oh,
watch
so
that.
good.
Fix that in your. I mean, that dude. I could see him doing improv. I could see him.
Hey, but he also did very good in a very different role in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yeah. I mean, I could. This guy. I could see him. I could see this movie being really great, especially. And we will get to. I will hit on this more for the ElseWords, but especially with this. When does the Flash movie come out? That's what I keep forgetting. It's 2019.
I think Flash was one of the upcomings. I thought it was 2018.
If it's 2018, I can see this because I know it's after Justice League because Justice League is
2018.
Okay, so this is definitely one of those movies that, and to tease our ElseWords, DC is deciding to go in a different direction when it comes to the movies. They're making it fun for everyone. Lord and Miller directing The Flash is the right step. Getting someone who it's very comedy focused, not to make a comedy out of The Flash, but to nail comedic moments, to have more lightheartedness. I believe Lord and Miller are the way to go.
It would certainly. It sounds appealing.
Yes.
The other part of this is who steps in to take over the Han Solo.
So this is the other part, and this is what it sounds like what Beat really found interesting, because one of the rumors was Ron Howard. Now the problem with Ron Howard is that
He was Opie.
I couldn't
and
think
opiates
of his
are
name.
killing America.
Yeah. No, the problem is that there's a Directors Guild of America rules that are preventing someone already working on a film from taking over for a director that is being replaced, except for a short-term emergency.
We'll
Yeah.
talk about that later.
So I mean,
Yeah, and Ron Howard is a really solid choice because he has done such diverse films. He can fit into a lot of different styles. He's very reverent to stuff that are other people's properties. So I think he would be a good choice, and it's kind of interesting just to think about Ron Howard working in the Star Wars universe. So that's intriguing in and of itself. If he wants to rock around the clock, I mean, but so yeah, that eliminates him. The another name that has been talked about is Joe Johnston, who did one of my favorite movies, which was the Captain America, the first Avenger film. I am not an apologist. I love all the Captain America movies, but I love The Winter Soldier because I think it's easily Marvel's best film still. Only easily, except when you compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy 1, which I think is so close. But I love the first Captain America movie because of how it felt and how it inspired and how it utilized the character to create much in the way that people are talking about Wonder Woman now. I think that is another person who could do a very good job on this.
Yeah.
But it seems so stylistically different if they've already filmed so much of this movie. Either one of them has to come in and try to make it feel seamless to what's already there with the footage that they have. Now, a lot of that can still be changed in editing, but it's not an easy thing to come into something that someone's been creating and are 60% done with and try to make that still feel the same.
Yeah, here's the other one that we haven't hit yet that I think could probably be the most logical solution. Kasdan. Get John Kasdan. I'm assuming it's John that here they just say Kasdan. Who has directed movies like The Big Chill and Silverado. Could step in as
Silverado.
Is actually no, it might be Lawrence then. As he's already in a prime position to know what needs to be fixed. If it does, so basically, it's if you don't like what's being done, then do it yourself.
Yeah, but then it becomes like, oh, I wrote this movie, and then they got these directors, and they didn't do it my way, so I got them kicked out so that I could just make the movie myself, which isn't something that I decided to do or they didn't hire me to do in the first place. It feels a little weird.
Yeah.
But you're right, it does make sense. And he's if it's who we are assuming, he's a very well accomplished director.
Yeah. Well, either on either case, and whichever one is the one that directed Silverado and The Big Chill.
Oh, Silverado. Big Chill is amazing too, but Silverado is just the idea of a Western, and when you think about that and then moving that over to Han Solo, which sounds maybe a little, Firefly, but what a great thing it is, because Firefly was a ship full of Han Solos.
Yeah. So sticking in the world of in the House of Mouse, but switching subsidiaries here, Axel Alonso has teased the return of Marvel 2-in-1. Now, do you want to explain before we get into the article what Marvel 2-in-1 was?
Marvel 2-in-1 was not an anthology book so much, but it was a team-up book that I remember from when I was a kid. And I didn't read a lot of it, but it starred the Thing from the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four does not currently have a book in the Marvel Universe. Two of the characters don't even exist currently in the Marvel Universe.
With how this article is saying it, and it could be like they're looking into it, those two characters are focusing on their family.
Yes, but not in the universe.
No,
they exist outside of it. It's a weird, wacky thing that you'd have to read Secret Wars to do. I don't recommend that you do that. So, but Ben Grimm is kind of wandering around. He's been in a few other books. Bendis has used him. Bendis I could see writing this, because Bendis, I don't think does great on team books, but he does pretty good on team up books. He did an Ultimate Spider-Man team up book for a little while in the Ultimate Universe, and that was fun, although they introduced characters that they had to change later on when they gave them their own titles. Anyways, so the Marvel team up was the Thing teaming up with another Marvel character every month. And it would be a different story. Sometimes it'd be a continuing story, but with a different team up happening each month through the continuation. And that's sort of something that they did back in the days, is that it's like, okay, we can't see that we can sell a Thing book of the Thing by himself, but we could probably sell a Thing book where he teams up with Spider-Man sometimes, and then teams up with Wolverine sometimes, and teams up with Doctor Strange sometimes, and all this other stuff. So he would always have a partner, but it would just be a varying partner. It wouldn't be like we make him the new Power Man and Iron Fist. This is a book that I really like. What I read of it was very specific, but it is one of my all-time favorite issues of a comic, which was they teamed up the Thing with Lockjaw from the Inhumans. And at the end of the issue, they showed us that Lockjaw could talk, which had never been thought of before, never been approached before. Everybody just assumed that Lockjaw was a dog and was an Inhuman dog that could teleport through vast distances. But in the story, we find out that Lockjaw was actually an Inhuman, which when the Inhumans get formed, they're born and then they're put into the, what is it, the Macron crystals or
Terrigen
mists. That's right.
Yep.
They're put in the Terrigen mists, and then they change, and most of them have some sort of bestial component. They don't always look human afterwards. That's why they're Inhumans, and they get some sort of powers. And so in this, it was like we never knew that Lockjaw was actually human, that was put in this form of this space dog.
Wait, this was in the original Marvel 2-in-1?
This was in, I think it might have been the last issue of Marvel 2-in-1 with the Thing. So the Thing is chasing around. He's chasing around Quicksilver because Quicksilver had married Crystal from the Inhumans, and they had a baby.
Yeah.
And the baby wasn't a mutant. And so Quicksilver wanted to put the baby in the Terrigen Mists to give her powers, because he felt like anything would be better than being just a human, because Quicksilver hated humans. Because that's what he's a dick. He's the most dickish of the X-Men characters. And when he was going to do it, he's like, well, anything's better than this. And then Lockjaw says, even me? You know, because that's what happened to me. I was a human innocent baby, essentially, and I was put into the Terrigen Mists, and this is what I came out as. And so at the end of it, they stop him from doing that because Crystal didn't want the baby in the mist. She didn't want her baby being deformed. She felt that she was perfect the way she was. So Ben, the thing says to Lockjaw, he's like, why haven't you ever said anything to me before? And Lockjaw's just like, never had anything to say. And it was this great, wonderful, perfect story in this single issue that existed and was beloved, and people still talk about it to this day. But they retconned it.
Yeah,
they retconned it, and they said that it's not true, and it was a joke being played by some of the other Inhumans, that they made Lockheed talk and everything. I choose to believe that Lockheed could talk. But
okay,
that's comics. They change stuff all the time.
Hearing that just made me realize they have taken that in so many different, like Ned's Declassified did that similar joke, and I'm like, wait, this was on Ned's Declassified, like the bullies on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. There was the one, he was a kid who had like a really like buzz cut, and then they're doing that episode on volunteering and stuff like that, and he goes, guys, volunteering should be, you know, a good thing. You should do it out of the kindness of your heart. You know, one of those speeches, and they go, why haven't you talked before? Well, I haven't needed to before.
It's the Silent Bob thing.
Yeah. It's like,
it's absolutely that. Why is Silent Bob cool. Silent Bob until he says something, you know, kind of philosophical at the end of each movie? Absolutely. But this is kind of where a lot of those, and maybe it's not the first time that it was ever done, but it certainly worked in the context of this comic.
Yeah. So they're bringing back it. So we should tease this, that Axel Alonso is the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, and he tweeted out a picture today of the big blue-eyed thing, Mr. Benjamin J. Grimm, with a number 2 on his belt. For those of you guys who do not know, Ben Grimm, a founding member of the Fantastic Four, as the thing with wearing his belt, it always had the number 4 on it. And I believe the picture that he had with it said, it takes 2. And this is...
It takes 2 to make a thing go right. I love it. I absolutely love that.
So the rumor right now, because like you said, and I will shed a little bit more light onto it. Right now, we've seen the Thing he is right now in Infamous Iron Man, the book that is written by Brian Michael Bendis, and it is following a Dr. Doom, who is taking over the Iron Man mantle. So we've seen him in there. We saw him in Guardians of the Galaxy before that, after Secret Wars, and we've seen the only other member of the Fantastic Four, Johnny Storm, getting it on with Medusa over with the Inhumans.
Yeah, he's part of the Uncanny Inhumans.
Yeah, he was a part of the Uncanny Inhumans, and I believe he's in another one of the books. But I can't remember what it is. It's not Royals. But I think he's still involved with the Inhumans and all that. And that just left, Reed and Sue Storm. And as the article says, is they're taking some time away from superheroics to be with their family. And this is the traditional ones, because there is the Reader version. I think it's a Reader. The Ultimates version of Reed Richards, that is in here and has been the antagonist in one of Al Ewing's Avengers books. I want to say Uncanny. No, not Uncanny. The one that became U.S. Avengers.
He's been doing Ultimates, and he's been doing U.S. Avengers.
It was the one before U.S. Avengers because it was spun into there with the DaCosta led New Avengers. That's it. And he's been, this character where he's just like, it's sort of like you don't know what he's, he's bad, but you don't know what exactly. But I like this idea. So, as a non-comic book reader, someone who you haven't been reading comic books recently, but you've been keeping up with what's going on. What do you think about the anthology format for nowadays?
Well,
these all-in-one books, like issues.
See, I like the idea of this if it's what it was. And so here's part of the problem is that a lot of books at Marvel, at DC, they're decompressed storytelling. That's been around for a good number of years. Warren Ellis kind of led the charge on it. Brian Michael Bendis has definitely done it, where it seems like you go 4 or 5 issues before anything even actually happens, and it's a lot of talking heads. What I liked about Marvel Team Up is that usually the stories are contained to one issue. You get your 22 pages, and you get a whole story in that one book. That was definitely far more prevalent in the 80s backwards. In the early 80s backwards than it's been since. It's rare to find a comic that gives you a one and done story. And like I said, the original Marvel Team Up definitely did stories that continued from issue to issue, but you still, if I want to see the Thing team up with Darkhawk, then I've got this one issue where that happens, and then they might pick up elements from that to continue the story because Ben's still in it in the next issue, but he's with a different character. He might be with Spider-Woman or something.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see the book follow that idea. I don't want to see 6-issue arcs of 2 characters teaming up. I want to see 1 to at most 2 issues of something.
Yeah.
So you get that quick pace, and then you get the constant changeover, so it's still always exciting. If someone says, oh yeah, so the Thing is teaming up with Squirrel Girl in the first story arc, and I've got 6 issues of that. Well, if I'm not a Squirrel Girl fan, then I don't really have the reason to read it. And when it comes to issue 7, I'm probably not going to remember, or the book will already be canceled if not enough people are a fan of. And Squirrel Girl is a bad example because she seems to be very popular. But
it makes sense. It does make sense because with that, Squirrel Girl readers might not want to read that story,
right?
And if you're a fan of Big Blue Eyes, but yet you're that small majority or small minority of people who don't like Squirrel Girl, waiting 6 issues might not be, or you might be like, might be like, let's skip it.
And so the Ultimate Team Up series that happened, which starred Spider-Man teaming up with different characters, those were mostly either 1 or 2 issues with each team up. Yeah. And they were different artists on each issue as well. So that, again, is why I think Bendis has been writing the Thing into different books. And Bendis only usually has certain voices that he can do that feel distinctive, and then a lot of the other characters start to sound alike, it's challenging, I think, for a lot of writers. But that's one of the complaints about Bendis as a writer, is that he can write Luke Cage well, he can write Spider-Man really well, but most of his other Avengers don't feel distinctive from each other. They all have the same patterns in their dialogue.
Not even Jessica Jones?
Jessica Jones is a little different. And Jessica Jones, he wrote really, really well in the original Alias series, but that was before he got to be the predominant head writer at Marvel, where he's written so many characters and so many events that it kind of all starts to blend in after a while. But he's been writing the Thing in, like you said, in his Iron Man book and in Guardians of the Galaxy before that. It seems like he's kind of the person who would be wanting to do a Thing team up book. Yeah. And here's the other thing, is while he did launch the Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four with Mark Miller, I think one of the only big titles that he's never done at Marvel so far has been the Fantastic Four. He's written X-Men for a while. He's written a bunch of different Avengers books. He's now writing Iron Man. He's written Guardians. Fantastic Four is one that Bendis has never done. If the Ultimate Team Up book, if the Marvel Team Up book ultimately leads to the return of the Fantastic Four as a series, that could be his doorway into making the Fantastic Four series what he wants it to be, and how he's going to tell stories in it if he is then the writer for that series. So this is just guessing, just rumor and conjecture at this point, but I could definitely see Marvel Team Up starting the thing, going for at least 12 issues, Bendis writing it, leading into Marvel relaunching the Fantastic Four with Bendis writing that. And not necessarily Team Up ending, but certainly leading into Fantastic Four coming back proper.
Yeah. I mean, I look at this and I go, I do think Bendis could be one that does it. But I remember, because a lot of people, the article points out that it calls the original 2-in-1 on an anthology series with rotating roster of guests in a done-in-one format. But they call it those characteristics would be a big gamble in the current comics climate. If that's the case, I see it being the opposite. I could see this being, something that takes off, because of the fact that a lot of people are getting burned out with.
A lot of people are getting fed up with.
They're getting number one fatigue, and all that.
Oh, absolutely. And Marvel is trying to launch their legacy thing that's going on. Marvel says that they're going to be looking to getting back to their core. They said something about publishing less titles going forward to try to consolidate things and to reel things into what Marvel was good at for a long time, because they've been struggling with sales and with fan response to their multitudes of events. And like you said, like their constant relaunches of, hey, it's been 5 months, let's give you a new number one on this issue of Captain Marvel, for instance. Like Captain Marvel got 3 relaunches, and it seemed like they all just were continuations of the last series, just with a new number one. So you get a bump up in numbers for a while, but then ultimately it goes down and down. Same thing sadly happened to Miss Marvel, is it got a sudden relaunch to a new number one for no reason, and it lost the momentum that it had in its first series, because people were like, I don't want to have to go into a relaunch of this book that I'm already collecting. Numbers are arbitrary. I just assume at that point they go to writing seasons of comics, but it's still, it feels like everything is tied to events and everything's tied to new number ones, and the books just can't be good books.
It's one of those, like looking over Brian Michael Bendis' Wikipedia page, this is the only Fantastic Four is the only book that he hasn't written. Like he has hit basically everyone else.
He's done a lot. He's doing the Defenders coming up or just started.
Yeah. And I look at this, like when I came into comics, Marvel had just finished up, like regularly reading. Marvel had just finished up Avengers versus X-Men. And one of the books that came out after that was A Plus X, which was a team up book where it was in the very same lines of Marvel 2-in-1, where you had it focused in on 2 characters. I think the thing was even one of them in there, but it focused on an Avenger and an X-Men, and it was like rebuilding after the after this big event that pulled them apart. It it sort of went, well, here, let's build them back up, let's build them back together, and stuff like that. I like that book. And there was even sometimes like where they had I think it was Cap and Cyclops, the original, Steve Rogers Captain America, where they were doing like that was like the main story, but it was like out of the like 30 pages, I think they maybe gotten 10 or 15, and it only went on for like 4 issues. and then it was really the focus was in on the other story that was in there. I think this could sell. I think this could be something that Marvel might realize, oh yeah, people do like these shorter one and done stories. Because and that would, in my opinion, be going back to the older Marvel, where you look at what a lot of the greater the great stories, a lot of them were covered in 3 issues, 2 or 3 issues, instead of these 6 or 12 episode or 12 issue books. It was like 3 done. Like X-Men Days of Futures Past was 2 issues and all that. I mean, it was in the trades where they ended up they pulled in other stories, and I think that's something that Marvel could get back to, but I think they don't, because of the fact that they're then the trade paperbacks don't sell as much, because you'd have to either cut down on price to do a 3 issue trade, or you group it with another thing and people might not buy it because of the other thing.
Yeah, I really want this to be a sign of. I grew up with comics being. We probably should have done this for ElseWords, because there's so much to talk about on this. I grew up with the comics being anthology books that were like several stories in a comic. And even just regular monthly comics like Richie Rich, you'd get several short stories in there. Archie with several short stories. You get Archie Digest today, it's still like that. But Superman Family and Batman Family, those are the books that I really love, because you get a couple of Superman stories, or a Clark Kent story and a Superman story, plus a Lois Lane, a Jimmy Olsen, and a Supergirl story, all in that book. Batman, same sort of thing. You get a Batman story, a Robin story, a Batgirl story, and so on. And I thought that those were great. And I would love to see that kind of storytelling come back. Not to replace everything else. The high continuity books certainly deserve to exist. They've sold well. They have an audience. But it seems weird to put so much into that one basket when there's so many different options for storytelling and kinds of books, that we see a growth in like different types of characters starting to develop. Why not give those other characters different types of stories to tell too, and different types of publishing? The woman who created Kamala Khan and / Miss Marvel,
G. Willow Wilson.
G. Willow Wilson. She said something recently about how if comics sell better in trade than they sell in single issues, and then the comic gets canceled because people are holding up for the trade, she's like, that's not a problem with the fans who want to buy trades. That's something that we have to adjust to. We have to decide then that this is the kind of book that's going to sell well in trades. Then we should sell it in trades as opposed to focusing so much on single issue sales. But the companies only see it as we sell the single issues first, and that develops down the road. Then we sell the trades, and we make twice as much money. I don't know. But the single issues support the trades, but not vice versa.
That's honestly something I would love to hear what people do. Because I am of the mindset of buying / reading the individual issues, and then the trades are gifts. Like, it would be like what I recommend to people, like like for example, Saga with Image. It's pick up this trade, or even book 1 or whatever. Or even with like Miss Marvel, it's like, okay, pick up Miss Marvel, here's or even buy it for, I'm like, here's Miss Marvel volume 1, this is the first 6 issues of the series, and let me know when you're done, what you think, if you like it, and I'll let you know, we'll go and we'll get you the second volume and stuff like that. I'm curious to know how many people buy both the floppies and the trade, because I would figure it would be a one or the other thing, because then it is, Marvel or DC or whoever double dipping in that way, because, they got you with the single issues, and now they're going to get you with the, with the trades.
some people with disposable incomes, it's two things. It's I get the issues so I can read them and keep up with them at the time that they're coming out because I want the storytelling immediacy of it.
Yeah.
It's like watching a TV series and then buying the DVDs of the TV series later.
Yeah.
Or I get the single issues and I want them for the collectability, but then I get the trade so I can have them on my bookshelf. And usually I'll buy the trades of the things that I want to reread, so I don't have to go and grab my comics out. But a lot of that has changed with digital. Some people buy the print comics and then use the digital codes or give the digital codes away. There's a lot of different variations as to how people purchase it, and it depends on what your income is and what your hobby money is. That's a little tough to decide as to what's the right way. But what I see now is that there's opportunities, like I was saying about video games earlier, is that some comics read better in long format. The people who had to wait for the 12th issue of Watchmen to come out or Camelot 3000 to come out would probably have loved to just have the opportunity to read it all in collection first thing and get that whole experience at once. And certainly it's been read more in collection than single issues by far in both those cases. Some books are great in the single issue format, and I think that a book like this would be excellent in a single issue format. And some books probably are better digitally than on print for whatever reason, just because of the comfort, because of how the stuff is laid out. If you make stuff for print and you do a lot of 2-page spreads in print, it doesn't really transfer well to when you're reading it on a phone.
Yeah. That sort of brings up the other part with it and again, I'm seeing where this could be an ElseWords. But you look at something like Panel Syndicate, Brian K. Vaughan's digital thing where he did the Private Eye comic book, and then when he struck the deal with DC and with Image, and they re-released it with how they did the art and they formatted the art, it wasn't exactly in the style of, but I think they worked it to where it was a double pages when they did the first volume of the Private Eye. And then he did the Walking Dead story as the other end of that deal. And it's one of those, I look at that and I'm like, I get it makes sense. Like if they were formatting it if they were doing the stuff for digital, as opposed to, okay, well, we got the single pages here and we got to get this many ads in, and we got to work the ads around, the art and the story. Okay, so we need, and doing it that way is where it seems like it is a lot with how it's done, with buying, the single issues of comic books. And for audio listeners, I just held up the current issue, all new Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4 to show my point, because it is sitting right next to me. So yeah, I'm super excited about this. I love good stories. I love me some Ben Grimm, and yeah. So the next story.
Also, I was all over the place, and I was completely wrong. It didn't happen in Marvel Team Up. It was the Thing's own series in issue 3 with that Lockjaw story. So if you're someone who's looking for the back issue now to find that story, the Thing's issue number 3 from 1983, written by John Byrne, which makes sense. Good John Byrne story.
Nice. So yeah, our next story is how Sony learned to cede control to Marvel on Spider-Man Homecoming. Short answer to that is you make money.
Shorter answer is Marvel has been having nothing but successes with their films.
Yeah.
And Sony has had progressively more and more struggles trying to get a Spider-Man film made.
Yeah.
And when they put Spider-Man into Civil War, the reaction was quite good. And they just want, hey, those coattails you got over there, those look comfortable. Can I ride on them for a little bit?
Yeah. So this is something that I've seen, and I've seen some people, and I know we talked about this before, so I'm hoping we won't stay too long on the topic. But because right now the deal is there's going to be 3 Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland, and then there's going to be something, there'll be stuff to go. I've heard from others, from like other like articles saying that the Venom movie, which Carnage is going to be the villain of for some reason, is in the MCU, but it's just that they're just not going to use the characters. Same thing with the Black Cat and Silver Sable movie, like it's going to be a part of the MCU. And this is something like you had said before when we had talked about this, that the deal with Sony and Marvel is that this will go for a little bit and then Spider-Man will go back to Sony and all that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. One is that as I've read it, and again, I'm not privy to anything that anybody else isn't. It seems that Tom Holland's contract is only right now for the 3 Spider-Man movies, the 3 standalone movies, and for his appearances in the Marvel films that we already know of, which are the Civil War and the 2 Avenger movies. Is that at that point in time, his contract is fulfilled and they have to renegotiate to get him to be a part of things like these spinoffs of the Silver and Black with Silver Sable and Black Cat, and Venom, and the now possible films of Kraven the Hunter and of Mysterio. Again, Kraven the Hunter has never been one of my favorite characters, but Kraven's Last Stand and some of the Kraven stories in Spider-Man were iconic and are things that I could see definitely working in a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
But anything of Kraven the Hunter on his own just kind of makes me think Crocodile Dundee / Kangaroo Jack / like I don't know, like Jumanji is about to come out. I don't know what a Kraven the Hunter movie on its own is. I don't know what a Mysterio movie on its own is. It's just a movie about mindfucks, and that's not about a character. That's about a situation. I don't look at these characters, and I can't conceive of them without their ties to Spider-Man. But I'm not privy to what Sony's vision is for these things, and I know Sony was working really hard to get a Sinister Six movie off the ground with the Spider-Man, but spinning out of the existing Spider-Man movies at that time. And so now they're trying to concentrate on all these villain characters in the hope of eventually signing Holland on to play in these movies in some way. But I just don't... The Sinister Six movie itself didn't sound interesting to me unless it was a Spider-Man movie with a Sinister Six. Because I don't want to watch a movie about a bunch of supervillains without the hero there that's supposed to be the foil to them. Like, I can handle watching a movie about bad guys. I get that. And that's sort of what Suicide Squad is it's supposed to be a movie about bad guys, but it's a movie about bad guys trying to do something that's at least somewhat heroic. Mm-hmm. They do try to go in and save the world. At the end, they all determine that, we could all leave and get out of here, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to fight to save the world because it's our world and because we all have something to protect. I don't see what 3 villain movies and whatever they make Black Cat, Silver Sable out to be in this universe are, when they're the only thing that ties any of them together is Spider-Man.
Yeah, it does seem weird on that part, just because, again, like you had said, it doesn't sound right. Like with what you said with Kraven, I thought of exactly with Mysterio. Like, what would a Mysterio movie be without Spider-Man? I mean, it's a lot of these people play off of Spider-Man. And then same thing with Venom, where it sounds like it's going to be the villain Venom, the traditionally what people think of when they think of Venom, not the agent Venom that that I really liked and enjoyed. In this, yeah, so then,
and in so Venom, I think Beatmaster even mentioned something about this. They could have saved Carnage for the sequel, but then what do you have Venom against in the first movie? If you have Venom against another Venom, which is essentially what Carnage is, only a crazier Venom, then at least it gives him something to go up against. But that's like, Superman fighting evil Superman in Superman 3. That's just like you and your counterpoint. That's Iron Man fighting the Ironmonger in the first Iron Man movie. It's okay. It's perfectly all right, but it feels a little stale. And then is Venom the good guy or the bad guy in that? Or are they just two antagonists with no protagonist? And it's just you're in the clash, and it's like watching a Godzilla monster movie where it's Godzilla against another monster, but neither of them are heroes because they're both crushing Tokyo.
Yeah.
In that case, it's Alien versus Predator. And in Alien versus Predator, you have the aliens, which are cool, and you have the predators, which are cool, but they're all bad guys because they don't give a shit about the humans. And so then you've got the humans who have to kind of exist outside of it and try to survive it.
So with this whole Sony and Spider-Man Marvel thing, this is where I do agree with the whole let's do this, Kevin Feige has his philosophy is a lower budget for the first and second movies, and then you get a bigger budget for the third, which seems like that worked or was the exact opposite idea with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, because I don't know exactly with the budget, but it makes sense because usually with the third movie, like you look at Captain America, this is I think the only other movie that I can think of that has and Iron Man. Those are the only two hero movies that we've had that have had three films. And Iron Man 3 was definitely a bigger budget. I mean, you've got the whole Christmas tree, light them up, all these different armors. Gosh, I can't think of words today. And Civil War was basically an Avengers movie, but just with Captain America on the name. And so that part to me makes sense. Is because they were going to do what was the budget at first? Was it 275 million? No, wait, it was more than that. Gosh, they were going to do like a ridiculously high budget, which was all bigger than all three. Yeah, 275 was bigger than all the other Spider-Man movies. The only one coming close was Spider-Man 3 at 258. And so then they're like, oh no, let's cut that back. And even with right now, I think Marvel is doing the right thing. My hope is that Sony would continue on with this because they're making money and they don't really have to do control, or they don't have to worry about control. If it goes bad, it's not on them, it's on Marvel.
It's kind of on them too, though, because Marvel's lending them their toys, and if Spider-Man Homecoming were to flop, it's going to be Marvel gets to say, well, we loaned you one of our most profitable characters and stars, and you couldn't make it work. So Sony, your production company, is the problem. It's certainly not Robert Downey Jr. or Iron Man. So yeah, we'll just take our toys back and keep doing our own thing. And when you're ready to give up, which you should, you can give us our toys back. And then we'll show you how to make a real Spider-Man movie completely right. And that's the thing, is Marvel can't lose here. I think Sony still has a lot to lose. What Sony's bigger challenge is if this turns out to be fantastically huge, and when the Marvel Sony team up throwback stops, if they don't succeed on their own after that, if when the training wheels are taken off, and they fall over on their faces, that's going to be a really tough issue. It's like, oh yeah, I really dig the Spider-Man stuff. I really love how he's teaming up with the Avengers and everything, and I think that's great. And it's, oh yeah, here's the fourth Spider-Man movie. Well, I don't know. Tom Holland's looking 30, and he's not he's not holding my interest as much anymore, and there's no Chris Evans, and they didn't get Rocket Raccoon to show up in number 4 or anything. So I don't know. I'm kind of tired of this franchise by the 4th one. That's the thing, is 3 is usually where we draw the line on any single character. The only reason we're getting 4 Avengers films is because it was supposed to be 3 was split into 2 different movies at first, and now they've just decided to make it a 4th Avengers.
But even with that, it's not. I mean, with this type of movie, with the superhero movie, you can break away from the trilogy. You can break away from the 3 by doing something as simple as not putting a number in the movie.
How many movies break away from the trilogy, and how many movies, when they do break away from the trilogy, are successful?
Well,
because when you look at, usually the trilogies are where things stop, and then later on they come back and they say, oh, well, we'll throw you a 4th one now.
Yeah. Because I look at it like this. The other problem that Marvel has, because it's one that, as my, the nerd amongst my friends, the comic book nerd, I have to convince them, you don't need to know anything about the other movies. Just come in and watch this movie, shut your brain off, watch some excitement, watch this action, enjoy your popcorn, enjoy your burrito, whatever it is that you're eating in the movie theater. And then if you have questions afterwards, ask me, and I'll tell you what happened before. Because I look at this as, really, this isn't, with the exception of Guardians, because they haven't really met the Avengers. We're on like movie number 18 or so from that.
Right. But you'll notice that, again, each of those characters hit their trilogy, and then while stuff continues in other ways, you're not seeing them get to picture 4 yet. There's no plans currently, according to Robert Downey Jr. and Marvel, to do an Iron Man 4. There's probably not plans to do a Captain America 4, because they still haven't even determined if Chris Evans is going to sign up for anything post the next 2 Avengers movies. And I would argue that if you came into Civil War dry, as it were, without having seen at least the 2 Avengers movies, but I would say Winter Soldier as well, that would have been a hard movie to pitch to the uninitiated.
My youth pastor actually went to, that was the first Marvel movie he saw, was Civil War.
And I'm sure he had a great time, but I'm sure he had a lot of unanswered questions from that.
And he had some, but it wasn't enough to where he was like, because I was sitting next to him, and I don't know if it was just him being respectful or whatever, but he gathered because, and again, he was in a room full of nerds, typical nerds. Sorry, IT crowd reference. To where he got some of the, why some things were funny because of, context clues from here. Like in Civil War, when everyone's like, they see Queens and everyone's like, yes! I think I talked about this when I reviewed Civil War. This was weird because this was the first time in a theater in Jackson, Michigan, in, small town USA, where people were cheering and clapping for trailers. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? We're not in LA or New York. This isn't a big city. Like, oh, we might see Chris Evans here at this movie. We should applaud, or something like that. It was, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're, an hour outside of a big town. Our greatest claim to fame is Super Suckers was filmed here. That's how small my town is. An obscure movie no one even knows about was filmed here. And so it's one of those, like, you look like, and he said afterwards that it was, he had some questions and I answered them, yeah, they appeared here, and, but I mean, because it had its own standalone plot for a lot of it. It was shit went down before.
Yeah, but it had a lot of plot that built on things that happened with Avengers 2, that what happened with Winter Soldier. There was Ant-Man. You know, all of a sudden they bring Ant-Man in, and that's something that I talked about with someone the other day, is that they were talking about how we're not going to see the integration of the Defenders characters into the Marvel film universe because it's unfair to put the expectation for people to have seen those shows to watch the Marvel films. I'm like, yeah, but there's a point where Ant-Man shows up in the middle of a civil war, and so did you have to see Ant-Man?
Yeah.
If you did, great. And if you want to, it's there. The only differences that I would say is that the Netflix shows are unfortunately only limited to Netflix streaming. So you have to be a Netflix subscriber to get to them, which it seems most people are. And it's a lot more of a time suck to watch 6 seasons of Netflix shows to get the context of them being in the movie.
Yeah.
If it's done right, it's just a cameo and it's done for fun and it's cool. For the super fans. But either way, I think Beatmaster made a point of, as we sign these stars up for more and more films, for trilogies that go into 6 films, that go into 10 films, that go into 20 films, they get more expensive. Yeah. They get older. That's the other problem with Robert Downey Jr. is that while he's in far better shape than I've ever been in my life, he's not going to be able to play this character forever. You see Hugh Jackman saying, I don't want to play Wolverine anymore, probably so he can eat a fucking cheeseburger once in a while. Chris Evans is going to be in the same thing. Hemsworth is going to be in the same thing. At some point, it's going to be hard for the actors to continue playing those parts, so they'll also end that way. When you get something like Harry Potter, that you get to see the kids grow up on the screen, but you also have a finite ending point of like, yeah, well, we've had them for 7 years, and now they get to finish their tale. That's special. But when you have things like Indiana Jones has 3 movies and it's a great trilogy, and then 20 years later they do a 4th one and it's a piece of shit, because it's hard to recapture that magic, that's more likely to happen.
Yeah.
Does Tom Holland want to play Spider-Man exclusively forever?
There's a couple things I want to hit on here with this. With the characters, how many times in comic books, Corey, you've read them a lot longer than I have, how many times has character A died and been replaced by character B?
Too many.
So,
and because it's not just a character B takes over the spot, it's a character B often loses their own identity, which was an interesting character in and of themselves. And it's that it's always oh yeah, but they're not going to leave Bruce Wayne dead forever. Steve Rogers is going to come back and be the Captain America again in a year.
Here's why I mention this, because yes, where that part always happens in comic books, and also sort of pisses me off. In the movies, it seems like people thinking logically, and this sort of ties in with my other part that I'm going to get on, would then realize, okay, we need to see, someone take over for Cap. There needs to be to spoil the comic book for Civil War, the moment where Steve Rogers dies so that Bucky takes over the Shield, or, where he gets really old, the super soldier serum, wears off to where now he's, a feeble old man who could still kick ass for some reason. And so, Sam Wilson takes the Shield to then you can recast the character. You can recast Steve Rogers to bring him back.
But that's ridiculous because it's trying to create, it's creating a through line. No, it's a logic in comics, because comics are much easier to suspend disbelief, because when you bring Steve Rogers back, he looks exactly like Steve Rogers again. When you do it in a film with a different actor, you're doing what a soap opera can get away with, because there's no way you can have people filming every day all year for multiple years and then not die or get old or anything else. But in the movies, one, why should they replace Captain America? Why should they replace Iron Man with people just going to those suits? Because then you don't have Tony Stark, you don't have Steve Rogers, you don't have the essence of what those characters are. You just have them in a costume and name only. When you could equally have a Winter Soldier movie that's about the Winter Soldier. The other part of it is that
I'm not-
I haven't seen the success of Sebastian Stan that proves that he can carry a movie like Chris Evans has. I haven't seen the
I'm
success
not
out
saying-
of the other people coming in to then have to take over this franchise, which doesn't need to happen. What Marvel's proven in their films is that you don't need to rely on these couple of main characters because they've made Ant-Man succeed. They've made Guardians of the Galaxy succeed. They've made Doctor Strange somewhat successful, I guess. I don't know. And that's what they should concentrate on.
Hold on. But there's a logic thing here that I feel like a lot of people are failing. I'm not saying replace with Anthony Mackie becomes Captain America or Sebastian Stan becomes Captain America because that's
what
how
you
it's done
just
in
said.
comics. I was using the comic books as the example. They bring end of Civil War in the comics. Who was Cap? It was Bucky. End of I'm blanking on the story. The end of the Captain America comic book where his the super soldier serum is drained. Who does he give the shield to? Sam Wilson. To where then we got two Captain America books, Captain America Sam Wilson, Captain America Steve Rogers, which is currently playing out right now in the comics. To look at these people, to look at these comic book, because we're going to get this. We're already getting this now with with Hugh Jackman, who has played who has been the only person I think to play Wolverine on the big screen. I don't think there's been anyone else who has done it, and he's done it for I think all but 2 X-Men movies. And even then I think he might have had a cameo in one of them. You're going to get this where it's either going to be a financial thing, where we have to pay these people too much, or an interest thing. They're not really interested. They want to go somewhere else. So then we're going to have to do one of two things. We're either going to shift focus, like you said, and we're going to do, someone else, a different character. We're going to do Doctor Strange, or we're going to do, the Great Lakes Avengers, or we're going to do, the secret, the Illuminati, or the Excalibur. We're doing more obscure characters, which in my opinion favors the diehards more. Or we could continue going with this, and instead of abruptly rebooting right away, like Spider-Man's done now for the 3rd time, like the Fantastic Four has done twice, and we get someone coming in to take over as a different character. Maybe Marvel, because they're far more creative than I do, they give a different character the role of Captain America. Not Sam Mackie, not Sebastian Stan to stick with comic book continuity, but someone else becomes Captain America.
And like I said, that in comic books context that works, because comic books are a lot less expensive to produce. They come out monthly. The story's constantly going. But in films, I think that's harder to pull off, because if you're relaunching it, because it's still a relaunch. It's like, hey, we know you've been watching this Captain America character, and his history is this, and his abilities are this, and he's played by this guy. But now we're going to put somebody else in the suit and say that they're Captain America.
But
why would the audience want that?
Couldn't you have a way to use, for example, the with Sam Wilson becoming Captain America in comics? You have Chris Evans, you put him in old makeup. And I'm just saying, if they did exactly like this, he's then old Captain America, he's old Steve Rogers going, I'm here today to tell you guys I cannot go further. And now I am announcing my replacement. I
can definitely see either Evans or Jr., Robert Downey Jr., or whoever being done with the franchises soon. But then I don't think that says Marvel is then like, well, we've got to keep making Captain America movies, because if they wanted to keep making Captain America movies, they have the opportunity to do that now.
Yeah.
And they're not. They have the opportunity to make more Iron Man movies now, and they're not. They're putting Iron Man in Spider-Man to get Spider-Man off the ground because it's a joint production. But I think in all cases, what Marvel's done is they've said, we'll get to our ending point with the Avengers characters as they are, and with this whole big storyline with Thanos as it is. But you can see they've developed things like the Black Panther. They're developing things like Captain Marvel. I think that they're going to step away from these characters entirely. Now, some of the characters that are a part of that, and maybe even some of these characters might show up in some of those other things. Like you've already seen the Winter Soldier is going to be in the Black Panther movie, which is just weird in a way, but also brilliant and wonderful. But I don't think that they're going to say, and then we'll go back and we'll do some Iron Man with a different person in the suit, and we'll do some, because they could be doing that with War Machine already. They could be doing stuff with Winter Soldier with his own movie already. Putting them in the costume doesn't make them that hero. And comics get to play a very different field because of the dense storytelling, because of the continuity, and because realistically, if you're a Marvel fan, you're bouncing over a bunch of Marvel books already. You can kind of get that background of a character from reading it for the last 5 years and reading it in his own title, and suddenly he becomes Captain America or whatever. It's a lot easier to play that way. I don't know that films do the same thing. It would be like if at the end of Batman v Superman, when spoilers for people who have not seen that movie and save yourselves, dear God, save yourselves. If at the end of that movie, when Superman dies, they say, hey, but in Justice League, we're going to have Kal-El come running in, and he's going to be the clone of Superman that is going to take over the role and play Superman in the movies from here on out. Because we decided we didn't like Cable or whatever. I don't think the audience is going to have the buy-in for that. They waited so long to see Superman and Batman fight, then Superman dies, and then, hey, by the way, no more Superman, guys. Or Superman 2 is actually like, no, this is a different guy.
Yeah. My only fear with all this is, and I think why I was trying to pitch the whole, we get Peter Parker to get Miles Morales, we get Captain America Steve Rogers to get Captain America Bucky Barnes, or Captain America Sam Wilson, is because, again, Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes. He is Marvel's #1 superhero. To see it go through, especially with hearing about what Spider-Man 4 with Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4 could have been, and what Sam Raimi wanted to do, because at that time that was sort of when I was really getting into the internet, and the and seeing, and then becoming a part of this and seeing this reboot, and then getting frustrated because we got the same fucking story again.
Yeah, and that's tragic. And we talked a little bit about how what Marvel could do, or what Sony could do, is use Miles Morales. Because one of the things about Miles Morales is that while he's still the guy who replaces Spider-Man, he gets to be something else. And his story has been told in a way that he wasn't like Spider-Man's sidekick for a number of years. Miles Morales has his own unique origin. He has his own story. He has his own abilities if they want to utilize them. And in parts, he came from his own entire world. So you could tell Miles Morales' story as being another Spider-Man without ever having to reference Peter Parker in the least. And that I kind of can get and appreciate. And even if they just use Miles as a Spider-Man for the Sony separate universe and have him be the foil to the Venom and everything else. But I think that would be cutting Spider-Man himself off at the legs with the Tom Holland version, the Peter Parker version, because, well, we're utilizing all these great villains of yours in other places and you don't get to be a part of it. Enjoy the Vulture, which, by the way, I think I am going to enjoy the Vulture, and I don't understand why the Vulture isn't the spin-off villain from the Spider-Man movie, as opposed to all these other villains that are getting their own films before even having an interaction with Peter. Yeah. Be that as it may, because I like interacting with Peter. in regards to legacy or replacement, I love the idea of having more characters of color, which unfortunately have in comics primarily been introduced as sidekicks in the history of comic books. So we have to take Falcon, but to give him prominence, we have to turn him into Captain America. I always thought Falcon was cool because he was Falcon. I thought Bucky was cool because he was Bucky. And certainly they changed him and made him cool in a different way when they made him Winter Soldier. Yeah. I think that Robin, Dick Grayson, is my favorite character in comic books.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been cool to me. And it doesn't matter to me if he's Robin, if he's Nightwing. I prefer those things to him than being Batman. But whatever. I just think that there's so many choices and so many characters, and what they're trying to do is develop other characters so that we get a Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel character, and maybe she gets a movie at some point. And we get a Squirrel Girl, and maybe she gets, well, she's getting a TV series. So that's already kind of happening. There's so many other characters that could potentially be great, but they have to figure out how to make them work in a film that maybe the comics don't do well, because the comics have concentrated on making every character Captain America. So you've got 3 Captain Americas running around, and every character Iron Man. So you've got 5 different Iron Men running around, and so on and so forth. And that's where I think a shortcoming of the comics could be overcome by the movies. And I think that's why Fahey doesn't want to work with idiots like Perlmutter, who wants to make the movies just like the comics and beholden to shit like, oh, you're going to make a fucking Inhumans movie. No, fuck, we ain't. Because the Inhumans suck balls compared to the goddamn X-Men, and you guys fucked up and sold the rights to the X-Men. So we're just going to do our own shit, but we're going to do it right. And we're not going to listen to your crap. And that's kind of what happened. Is you can see the difference between the TV stuff and the film stuff. Part of that's budget.
Yeah.
But it's a different level of storytelling.
So I'm gonna end the news segment with this. Could you see, because you mentioned TV, and again, I am looking at the future where we get away from the Avengers. Could you see something where maybe these Avengers characters, after a while, they get recast, but for TV?
Yes. Or for a streaming service.
But what I mean is we get an episodic thing as opposed to 2 hours in front of a big ass screen with a bunch of other people.
If the budgets allow for it in the right way. And that's the thing, is do I see Marvel saying, hey, we've done really well with these movies, let's go back down to a CW level TV show with the characters? No. But I can see them doing something, and they already kind of do when you look at the animated stuff.
Yeah.
The Avengers cartoons are that. If they get the animation to such a level as what they want to in films, maybe that's something to do. Because they're planning a Spider-Man animated movie, which is the Miles Morales character, at Sony, at the same time that they're doing Spider-Man movies that are Peter Parker. Now, it's a different studio. I could definitely see that. And I certainly see somewhere down the line where they relaunch the whole spiel and make a new Captain America and my Iron Man and everything else, because fucking movie companies are unforgiving with the fact that they will drive an idea into the ground eventually. Yeah. It's like, we're not going to just stop making Captain America films forever because we made 3 really good ones and the guy aged out of it, but we'll give it some time.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can develop other things as well as we did when Iron Man, when it first was announced, was like, yeah, but is that really going to work?
Yeah.
And now it's like, you can't even think about it as being other than a huge success.
The one thing that I do hope that they take from the CW, the DCW, as Tom Merritt coined, for when we do eventually get to the reboot of these things, is, like, for example, with Iron Man, we redo Iron Man, and there are flashbacks to his, him with his father. Robert Downey Jr. now plays Howard Stark. Just as a small little cameo thing, that's what I would love to see.
Certainly that there's an element of fun to that. That's like trying to involve Linda Carter in the Wonder Woman movie, and should she have played Wonder Woman's mom in that. Should she have played Hippolyta? I mean, if you're beholden to the fans, the longtime fans, then yes. But if you want to if you're making a Hollywood movie and you want it to be seen at a Hollywood level, then you don't fuck around with cameos as much. You just make the best goddamn movie that you can. There's something to be said for doing stuff for the fans specifically, and there's something to be said for doing stuff for the general audience who isn't going to get your in joke and is just going to look at it and say, why am I supposed to be impressed with this person being here? Now, Robert Downey Jr., I think, is always going to be someone who can be in anything and can play pretty much any part. I think he's fantastic. I love to see him on the screen. And if they want to involve him and he was interested, sure. But then would it detract from whoever is taking over as Iron Man even more? Because that's already going to have big fucking jet boots to fill. Is the person who tries to play Tony Stark after Robert Downey Jr. has. That's like stepping into the role of Han Solo.
Yeah.
It's like, you may be the best fucking actor in the world, but you're not Harrison Ford. And I'm not saying Harrison Ford is the best actor in the world, but he was fucking Han Solo. And you ain't.
I'm gonna let that go. I do have a response to that, but I'm gonna let that go because of time and because I want to get to the ElseViews. So that is it for the news. And hey, really quick, do you guys anyone out there have a little extra time on their hands? Would you want some experience as a social media manager? Maybe you already are a social media manager. Well, hey, we need your help. We are searching, the Galactic Network is searching for someone to help us step up our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon game. And if you, like us, are nerds and have a passion for community building and are into sci-fi, horror, gaming, horror, I realize I have the same thing that Nate has on Ink Geeks, is I do not put enough emphasis on the syllables. Horror, gaming, comic books, the paranormal, and other topics like that. We would love to hear from you. You could email us contact@gncasts.com. That's GNCASTS.com. And the ElseViews, I want to hit this because I love my ElseView. And also I loved Corey's ElseView, and I'm going to do his ElseView here. I'm
Phrasing.
I'm gonna enjoy his ElseView as well. So it's a toss-up. You want to do yours first, or shall we do mine?
Yeah, mine will be really quick.
Yeah,
I've seen so much stuff, and so many things that I could have thrown into my ElseViews this week. Some of them were highs, some of them were lows, some of them I can't remember off the top of my head, so maybe that's why I didn't put them down. But the one reason why I chose this one is because I keep coming back to this. So a couple weeks ago, Beat, our producer, Beatmaster, posted a link on Twitter. It popped up and said, hey, friend of the show, because I say that because she's been on here. I don't know if she remembers. Kristi Cates was doing a concert. Yeah, she was doing a concert on Twitch on a Monday night. I think it was a Monday. And you should jump over there and watch. And I'm like, well, damn straight I'm going to watch. So I go over there, and she does a whole little show, her and her guitar, just playing songs, singing. Be very attentive to the chat and taking suggestions of songs that she could do for future shows and stuff. So she's now doing a regular show every Saturday night on her Twitch channel, which is Twitch TV/Kristi Cates. That's KRISTIKATES for the listeners. And she plays about 4 hours or so on Saturdays. And I don't know if it's a practice session for her to go and do live shows on the road or anything, or if it's strictly going to be a Twitch thing for a while. Whatever it is it's just delightful to watch. Now, there is a big chat that shows up for this. Friends of ours, like Phil Rude, JF DeBow, Beatmaster, of course, is thrown in there a lot. I've seen some other people that I know from Twitch, from the Ink Geek Studios group. All of them are in there, and she chats back and forth with them. I haven't been in the chat as much because usually I'm watching it on my Roku through the Twitch channel on there.
Yep.
But I just have it up, and it's like getting a semi-private concert where you can give suggestions. She's got a playlist that you can choose songs for her to perform from. It's so much fun. She is incredibly talented, both in her personality of working with the audience and working a room, essentially, but also in her singing, and her song choices are some of my favorites. She did Crowded House this last week, which is one of my favorite tunes. She does the church. She does a lot of different things that if I was going to ask her to learn songs, they would be at the top of my list of her to do, and she's already doing them. A lot of Amy Mann and stuff too. So that's really is all there is to say about it. Kristi Cates is very talented. It's great to just listen to some great music for a little while and enjoy a show in the privacy of your own home on your TV or on your tablet or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that like I personally have been wanting to watch because I hear her. She is one of the few of the select people that I have on Twitter that the notifications or whenever she posts, it notifies me. And not to make that sound creepy or anything. But it's, it's mainly because, I follow a lot of people, and the flow, it's easier to select people. It's like, oh, hey, they posted, what did they post? Oh, cool. Boom, get into that and see what they're doing. Like Schwood Black Ops is one that I have as well. And so she started posting this. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then it's like I would get home, and it's weird because I would catch it at work, like her posting like, oh, I'm training or I'm practicing to get ready for the show tonight. And then I would get home, completely forget. Like, it's like, all right, what am I going to do? Oh, let's read a comic book, or let's play, a game or whatever. And then just escapes my mind.
Yeah, I get notified from Twitch itself.
Yeah.
Which lets me know when she's starting. And yeah, both of the shows that she's got recorded on her Twitch channel, they're 5 hours each.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's definitely one of those things that like I am going to check out. And and I'm hoping she sees this and will be wanting to come back, because I have questions for her, honestly, about this. Because I'm a sound guy. I'm a behind the scenes when it comes to music. Making sure that they sound good, somewhat decent with how my skills are. It's so, it's like, I'm curious as to the on stage side of things, learning more about that, and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely think people should check that out at twitch.tv/Kristi Cates, with KRISTI KATES. Yeah. So Corey, did you check out my nerding out or my ElseViews?
I haven't seen it yet. I had only seen a couple episodes of the show while it was airing before it was canceled. But I'm definitely interested in watching this episode that didn't make it to air. Yeah,
so this is because I think, what was it, last week we talked, or no, it was last time you were on. We talked about the passing of Adam West.
No, I was not here for that.
Oh, that was last week. Yep, sorry, that was last week. Sorry, remember. Sorry, that's right, because we had alternative Corey, Sean Burns on.
We'll just go with better Corey.
I think we did say that too. But we talked about the passing of Adam West, and as a tribute, DC released on their YouTube channel the episode of Powerless that he cameoed in. And holy Batman callback, was this a great episode. If I thinking correctly, hopefully thinking correctly, this, I believe, would have been the next episode of Powerless to air before they just pulled it off of the schedule and stuff like that. This, I would have seen I could imagine seeing a big bump in ratings. Coming, even you excuse the timeline. You excuse them, releasing this as a tribute to Adam West. them playing, one of his last appearances on TV, one of the last things he filmed. I look at this as a great episode. Adam West was great in here. There's a lot of callbacks and Easter eggs to the 66 Batman. You have Vanessa Hudgens' character. She comes in wearing one of the other characters' shirts in the main story. She gets this condo, and then it gets blown up by aliens from this other planet, and it involves a very Donald Trump-ish Lex Luthor, because there's no foreshadowing in that at all, who is behind a lot of these things. And so her apartment is blown up, so the coworkers decide to get to help her out. One of them gives her one of her sweaters that fits her like a dress, so she's wearing it like a dress. And so the first thing you see from hear from Adam West is why in the full like Batman style, like, why hello Catwoman, sort of. That sounded more like Leonard Nimoy or something like that, or Sulu. I don't know why. I'm horrible at doing impressions, but it was like that. Why hello Catwoman. God, fuck it, I'm not even gonna try anymore.
You can't do Adam West if you're not Adam West.
It was in that style, which was so great to hear. And they do twice, they have him talking to the camera, doing which I don't think he ever did in the TV show. I don't think he ever did the whole, what will we find our characters out in next? Tune in next week.
That was usually the announcer. There was a narrator for the show that did all that stuff.
Yeah, so he did those parts, and it was like, am I watching like a weird Elseworlds episode of the Batman TV show from 1966?
Elseworlds, huh? That sounds dangerously close to a podcast.
Yeah. But no, it was a really fun episode. A great tribute. I love these things. I applaud DC for doing this when they did.
I do as well. And for NBC, if they had to sign off on anything allowing it to happen, it's sort of, I mean, not only is it unfortunate because Adam West's last role, his passing and everything else, but a lot of people are discovering this show because of this. Yeah. Because they're looking to see the Adam West episode that he was on that hadn't aired, and it being released is now building interest in this show. I'm seeing comments on the YouTube channel of like, hey, this show isn't really bad. And by people who didn't check it out when it was on, and now in hindsight are like, oh, I'd like to probably see more of this. And it was canceled, which is, yeah. Sometimes it's not that a show isn't good enough to be on the air and continue. It's just that the audience didn't find it or didn't think enough of it to check it out at that point in time. Maybe, I'll get to it later on when it's on Netflix or whatever. And they lose the ability to get more of it by the time they finally do get around to it because it didn't have anybody viewing it at the time. I'm not saying NBC was wrong to cancel it if the numbers weren't there. It's just always sad, especially because there were so many people that we are personally fans of that were on the show. Yeah. And what I'd seen of it, I liked, but I'm not excusing myself for the fact that I didn't keep watching it either. I caught it here and there, and I liked it some when I watched it, and it certainly had better moments than others. But yeah, it's doubly sad that people who are now going, oh, Powerless, this is pretty good, didn't get to enjoy it when it was on, that maybe it would continue. It's kind of like the people who all were like, hey, this Arrested Development show that I'm watching on Netflix is fantastic. Where has this been all my life? It was on Fox, but Fox wouldn't tell you about it. And, but somehow it kept winning Emmys. So you could have picked up on that guy.
So I look at I'm looking at some, like the comments they're talking. So many people are talking about like where it would go. And I could see Powerless, and if I remember correctly, and I'm actually going to do look at the Wikipedia, but I could see this falling into a similar situation that Supergirl had. To talk about the TV series here for a second, where for NBC to air it, there's a big portion of it, even though it was developed by Warner Brothers. I could still see, this being they have to pay so much just for the licensing of the characters.
Kind of like what happened in the Tim Allen comedy show that got canceled.
Yeah, similar with that. But okay, so this wasn't even, there was 3 episodes. Sorry, I'm getting off track. But so I could see this fitting in, like some people are mentioning, and there were mentioning like, something like TBS, because that's also a Warner owned company, where it would fit it. And I could see that it would be a little too clean for a lot of the shows that are on TBS.
Where TBS is going with their comedy, and they are developing a lot of good shows right now.
Oh yeah,
it would be a different feel. CBS maybe their streaming service that they're about to launch with the Star Trek Discovery is a possibility if they want to continue with it. That's if these people haven't already moved on and found other gigs. I remember when Community went off NBC and got picked up by Yahoo.
Yeah,
I very much enjoyed that last season, but it was a very different feeling show by the time it got around to that. Losing some of the actors and characters already at that point in time made it tough to get that magic back. And that's for those of us who are willing to go look for it in these places. And that was free. Let alone putting it on a pay service where people are already determining if they want to spend the $7 a month to watch the couple of shows that are there.
Yeah. So there were 3 episodes that hadn't aired. No Consequence Day, and these episodes all sound great. And then When Luther Draws, the one that they did air on CBS All Access later, or not CBS, on YouTube. When Luther Draw is the Adam West episode, and then Van of the Year is the first season finale. But No Consequence Day, talks about, in wake of Lois Lane's death, Ron tells the team about a theory where Superman will rewind time to save her, and there will be no consequences, and there would be no consequences. When Luther Draw is, Chairman West, I wonder who that is, delivers some unfortunate news to Van and Emily. Meanwhile, Jackie gets a shocking surprise that will change her life. Van of the Year is the season finale, where Emily deals with Van stealing credit for her generosity at the office. Meanwhile, Teddy pushes Ron to get his new invention to the masses. Those are all the plot synopses, like things from Wikipedia. Like, I would love to see the other 2 episodes, because I did enjoy the show, and it's like, I want to see more. Honestly, that's the big thing, is I want to see more from this because of how it it ended. And I do feel like there was so much stuff that could have been, I could see this being done really well, especially just for what the show is.
It definitely seems like, with the way that we have so many options, there's no reason to not have a show be able to finish airing its episodes in one format or another. Maybe NBC doesn't want to put it on the air because they don't have the advertising that they would lose by airing it in place of something else. Although, I got to be fucking honest, I don't see a lot of shit on NBC that looks like it's bringing in big numbers. They've abandoned Friday nights again, right? Or it seems like a lot of stations are like, on Friday nights we just replay the shit we played in the week.
Friday, it seems like that. But I think the big part, and this is weird, because it's like, looking at the US viewers in millions. The pilot for Limitless had 3.1 million. The lowest episode was called I'm a Friend You, which is Crimson Fox. Is the second part of her arc with I'm blanking on the actress's name. Natalie Morales. She, you know, it was the exit of her. That gay got a 1.81, and then it stayed, you know, in the low twos. You know, at 2.02, 2.04, 2.03 with the last episode, Emergency Punch Up that ended. All in all, I look at that, and that's not a. I mean, over the course of what is it, 9 episodes? Yeah, that's pretty steep of a drop to go from 3.1 to, you know, 2.3 million viewers. I wonder how much of that would be demographic, like if they're not hitting the right demographic that they needed, or what that was.
Well, again, the same thing is you have to look at, are the changes, did we drop a show because the show wasn't doing well, or did we drop the show because we had other ideas for what to do with this time slot, and where things were getting moved around, it didn't fit into what the next season was going to be? Because again, that's the excuse they gave with Last Man Standing, is it wasn't that Last Man Standing didn't have good numbers, it's that they decided to put Friday nights into a different kind of show territory, and they didn't have a place to put Last Man Standing that made sense on their schedule throughout the week. They didn't feel like it would succeed in the same way there. And it was an expensive show for them because it was made by, I think, produced by Fox, as opposed to produced in-house by Disney. There's a lot of factors that come into it, and it's not always about numbers. It's not always about ratings. But again, if the stuff's already produced and you have it and you're just sitting on it, you know, let the audience have that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sign of goodwill. It's something that it just makes sense to do. Just sitting there and letting it burn up in a closet like old Doctor Who episodes doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, and what does it hurt you, in all honesty?
Right.
I mean,
even if you make me go to NBC.com and watch it on your goddamn browser with your fucking pop-up ads and shit, if I choose to do that, you're just paying for fucking hosting.
Yeah. So I think we're going to end the show, but we will be back next week. So fear not. Hopefully, I say that, and then watchers will be like, "Hey, can we do it next week? Can we push it off?" But anyways, this is where I'm gonna talk to you guys, the viewers and listeners, for a second, because I'm gonna tell you about a couple ways you can help us out here. You know, keep the lights on here, as it were, because I'm afraid of the dark. You know, we got bills that we need to pay. You know, there's hosting, and you know, for the podcast, you know, the audio files themselves, for, you know, the website, all that stuff, and that costs money. So you can help us out by mainly going to gncast.com/support, and on there you will find one of two things. You will find the Patreon link, which is also at patreon.com/galacticnetcasts, and you know, it's very simple. For a cup of coffee, you'd buy, not even that, I mean, because I don't even drink coffee, I don't know how much that costs, but for like $1 a month is the minimum you could do. You know, it's literally the very least you could do to support us, is to do $1 a month, and boom, it helps us keep the lights on. Do like a lot of our hosts do, and support us on Patreon. The other way that you could help us out is by doing the Amazon affiliate link. You know, you know, you go there and you do your shopping, and a small percentage of that, instead of going to Jeff Bezos, goes to us to help us keep the lights on. And you can find both of these over at gncasts.com/support. The other thing you can do is you can leave us feedback. You know, we love hearing this. You know, I want to hear you guys. You could contact us by leaving us a voicemail at 805-328-3966, or emailing us mail@ElseNerds.com. I read all of it. You know, including the newsletters that I subscribed using that email address, because I'm like, hey, I need a new email address to do a 7-day trial. Boom. All of these subscription options and links can be found over at gncasts.com/subscribe. And you can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/Galactic Netcasts. It's also where you can find the Twitter at Galactic Netcasts. Our show is at ElseNerds. The producers are at Beatmaster80 and Mr._Fusion. You can find me at that Gregor and Corey. where can people, I hate to ask, but where can people find the stuff you do?
You can find the comics that I help publish every week at don'taskcomics.com.
And the final thing to be said is this has been a Don't Tell Glenn production. We will see you next week.
Or else I won't, because you know me. I'm just in my own world, man.
We're all figments in that.